Welcome to tonight's planning meeting. The meeting is being recorded, so you can watch it. You are able to film it yourself, but I would just be grateful if you could let me know in advance if you're doing that. And could you all make sure that your mobile phones are turned to silent? Are there any updates before we start? Doesn't look like it. Okay, I've received two apologies, one from Councillor Hollingsworth and Councillor James Taylor is substituting for him, and one from Councillor Upton and Councillor James Fry is substituting for her. And I also understand that Councillor Regisford is on her way, but she's going to be late. Okay. Do we have any declarations of interest? Councillor Railton.
I used to be a trustee of Falcon Boat Club. I'm still a member of Falcon Boat Club. And I think any reasonable person would think I have a conflict of interest for the first item. So I will very shortly leave, get changed and come back, if that's right, for the second item.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
I've made public comment on a previous application on the site of the co-op, but not on this application. I've been advised that I can continue on this by the officers.
Anybody else? Councillor Raymond.
I called in item number 6, yes. But I've come here with an open mind.
Councillor Henwood.
It's a public interest, Chair. So I am a former member of Falcon Rowing Club. No longer an active member at the moment, but will be viewing it with an open and objective mind.
Oh, sorry, Councillor.
I don't think it's interest, but as he said, we didn't make any comment, but I was on the planning application last post office site application film, so I believe number of others would be here. So
indeed, I know I was, and probably, as you say, a number of us, and Councillor Fowler, that quite a few people. Yeah. But this is a new application, and so that's fine. But thank you for that, Councillor Kerr.
I was one of the people who called in the item 1.
You haven't, have you?
It was due to community interest and request from the Residents Association, and I'm viewing it with an open mind.
Thank you for that. We can now move on to the minutes of the last committee meeting. Those are. So I'll go through both accuracy and matters arising. Page 1, page 2, page 3, and page 4. So are you happy for me to sign those as a correct record? Yeah, okay, thank you very much. And we now move on to our first substantive item, which is car park at Meadow Lane. And I'll hand over to Rob Fowler, who's presenting.
Thank you, Chair. Hoping that's going to appear on our screen. So the application site is Meadow Lane Car Park, situated to the north of Donington Bridge Road in the East Oxford area. So on the screen at the moment, this is the site location plan. I have some photos and plans which I shall move through quite quickly. These were circulated prior to the meeting this evening, but I can come back to these during discussion or questions if that's useful. The officer report discusses the history of the application site. Whilst the site has been used for car parking since the 1970s, the car park was resurfaced without planning permission in 2018. A retrospective application for the resurfacing was approved in 2021. By way of background, this shows the site prior to the resurfacing work. This was after the resurfacing work. In 2019, this photograph was taken, but prior to the granting of the retrospective planning permission, where some remedial work was carried out within a prescribed time frame by condition. This is a more recent view of the site, where some of the aforementioned remedial work was carried out. Just note on the distance in this photograph here, where I'm just putting my cursor at the moment next to the yellow car. This area of the car park was actually reduced in size and some landscaping was approved behind it. Also in the photo is a gate that's used to ensure that the site is only used by members of the rowing club, as outlined in the officer report. And lastly, I have a photograph of the site during a busy peak use in the summer. This is a very recent photograph. The use of the areas beyond the surfaced area of the car park is discussed in the officer report in paragraph 7.22 on page 33 of your agendas. The application seeks to vary planning conditions, specifically condition 6 attached to the 2021 planning permission that restricted the use of the car park so that the car park could only be open to the public, and not used exclusively by Falcon Rowing Club. The car park would be operated as a paved suburban car park with parking charges in place to preclude commuter parking in particular. So this is a site plan of the car park as proposed. The proposals have included provisions that have been requested by officers. The slide on the screen shows that a one-way system around the car park is proposed, along with signage and a machine for charging. These improvements are recommended to be required by condition if planning permission is granted. It's understood that representation has been sent to members of the planning committee directly from the Falcon Rowing Club and from Mr. Yee. Officers consider that the points raised in these representations are already addressed in the committee report. The application is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions outlined in your agenda, starting on page 35. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Do we have any questions at the moment to ask? David.
Thank you. I understand that the public can use the site as it is at the moment. Could you explain why there is a need to remove condition 6 of the application?
Yeah, sorry, can we just answer that? And then I should really have asked the speakers. Yes, but since you've asked, do you want to, sorry, David, do you want to ask that afterwards? Okay, thank you. Sorry, that was my fault. Yeah, can we have, we've got, against the application, we've got Mr. Barnett, and for the application, we've got Emma Gubbin. So Mr. Barnett, could you come forward? And you've got 5 minutes.
I'm Nick Barnett and I'm the treasurer at Falcon Boat Club. So Falcon Boat Club is a volunteer-run charity that's been part of Oxford sports community for over 150 years. We've been based at Meadow Lane long before there was a car park. In fact, as the planning report mentions, the only reason a car park was allowed on that green belt location is because it's required by Falcon, who have an operational requirement for a car park in close proximity to their site. Until a few years ago, the car park was larger. It would probably take 50 cars. Over the years, we've shared the car park with other individuals and groups, but in recent years, the car park has been made smaller. The introduction of controlled parking zone and WO lines on Meadow Lane has placed significant pressure on the remaining parking spaces. A few years ago, we raised funds to build a new boathouse. This was a major investment by us into the site, providing facilities for residents of Oxford. As part of the planning approval, the council included a condition that we have to be able to provide 35 car parking spaces for our members. At the time, the car park was larger and our approved car parking management plan provided designated spaces for Falcon and other users. However, the council later reduced the size to 37 spaces and made it for the exclusive use of Falcon. We currently have more than 500 members, most of them walk or cycle, but the club depends on a large team of volunteer coaches and helpers to provide safe and secure environment for our members. Many of these volunteers drive to the club and carry boats on their vehicles. They need to know that there'll be parking space for them and that they won't be charged. We're happy to work with other community groups such as St Mary's and St John's School for them to use the car park for dropping off and collecting pupils during the week. However, we need the full car park at our peak times. The current proposal was called in partly due to the concerns about the poor level of consultation from the council with Falcon. However, since being called in, there's still been no meaningful consultation. As a result, there's a lack of understanding of the impact of the proposed changes. The design and access report is poorly researched. For example, the claim that the car park is rarely full outside of rowing events is simply false. In reality, the car park is used every day and often to full capacity on Saturday and Sunday mornings, as well as most weekday evenings. The Oxfordshire County Council Highways Officer states that he struggles to see any real benefit behind the proposals and does not agree that the proposals meet the requirements of those visiting a district or local centre. He also says that he does not consider that opening up the car park on a pay and display basis is likely to have much of an impact in reducing any of on-street parking pressures in the locality. In my opinion, introducing pay and display will encourage some drivers to use the nearby residential streets where the parking is free for up to 2 hours. This could lead to more traffic on surrounding roads. It should also be noted that council pay and display car parks are generally displayed on drivers' sat-navs, so it's likely to increase traffic to Meadow Lane, not decrease it. Although we've been waiting a long time for this planning review, I feel the current proposal has been rushed through without sufficient consultation. Is there a need for pay and display? There currently isn't an issue with commuters using the car park during the day. There's no detail about the proposed charging structure for pay and display. Surely the proposal cannot be approved without that crucial detail. There's no mention of any special provision for Falcon members. In other car parks in Oxford, adjacent to sports facilities, there's a permit scheme for members of the club. Why hasn't that been mentioned? We'd like to work positively with the council to find ways the parking area can be served the wider community, provided that Falcon's busiest times are respected and given priority. In conclusion, we request that the committee reject this proposal or defer its review until there's been meaningful consultation with Falcon trustees and a resolution regarding the special provision for our members.
Thank you very much. If you go and sit down, and then we might call you back, so maybe questions specifically addressed to you later. Thank you. And we've now got Emma Gubbins. Thank you.
I think it's quite important with this application to really distinguish the council's responsibilities between the local planning authority and landowner in this instance. It's quite easy for the two to become conflated. So the local planning authority cannot grant exclusive possession of an area of land that is for the council as landowner using different powers. In terms of consultation with Falcon, we appreciate what Falcon are saying, but we're also hearing very loudly that other members of the community value the use of this car park. When the condition was originally applied, we did work with Falcon and we did actually offer them a lease over the entirety of the car park. That lease wasn't signed at the time, and since then we have had a number of representations from alternative groups and community groups really emphasising how much they value this car park and how it supports their access to the river. And that isn't something that I think as landowner the council can ignore. We have offered Falcon Rowing Club some alternative solutions over the years that we've been considering this application. So we have offered, for example, a lease over 8 spaces, which would then allow their coaches, who I understand travel from a longer distance, to have guaranteed parking. Unfortunately, that offer was not considered by Falcon. There is also the opportunity for permits that is open to any user of any of our public car parks. So there has been some considerable consultation with the council as landowner through this, and we are open to continuing those discussions once the application has been determined. Either way, we will be open to granting a lease to Falcon Rowing Club over part of this. I completely agree with the statement that the Rowing Club have made, that historically this car park has been used by a number of different groups. That has been the position until very recently. What this application is actually looking to do is to revert to that historic position so that other users can access this and can access the river and the open space. I don't have anything further to add, I think.
Thank you. Okay, and if you could stay around, so in case we ask questions. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Councillor Henwood, sorry, I cut you off before. Do you want to ask your question again? Did everybody hear that? Okay, thank you.
At the moment, the the condition 6 of the 2021 planning permission means that the gate has to be locked outside of the hours of use of Falcon Rowing Club. The car park is exclusively for their use at the moment.
Councillor Kerr.
So on page 31, 7.14, it says that the uncontrolled use of the car park for commuter parking was one of the reasons for the imposition of condition 6 in the first place, right? Which obviously now doesn't apply because if it's paid, then you would assume that commuters can't use it. But what were the other key reasons for the idea, basically for the original planning? The 71 planning made it a public car park. Then this 2021 planning was like, oh no, it's not going to be a public car park anymore because we don't want commuters parking there. What were the other reasons, other than that reason, that I can't find? And apologies if it's in there.
So the condition included reasons which I think included amenity and highways safety. I don't think there were any other reasons. So the amenity issue concerned the increase in activity that was associated with when that car park was resurfaced. It was being used.
The ASB, basically.
It was being used more as a result of being properly surfaced rather than being a gravel car park.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Taylor.
One of the objections to the application and something that one of the speakers brought up is the possible giving of permits to the Falcon Rowing Club. Is this something that this committee could feasibly do?
I think that's probably not a planning issue, but I will ask the officers to, it's something that could be done, but this is primarily about the use of the land. But Rob, do you want to come back on that?
I think that would be a matter really for the landowner, for the council as a landowner to deal with how they wanted to manage those spaces. What's the recommendation in front of you today is to remove the condition restricting the opening of that car park and its use by Falcon exclusively. If then, once it's a public car park, permits are sold by the landowner, if that's the way they wish to manage it, that would be for their consideration.
I think it's worth also bearing in mind that there was a condition on the original Falcon Rowing Club planning application which required them to look at a car park management scheme for these spaces. It was recognising that the City Council owned this piece of land and therefore, how that was managed to balance out, public activity or public use and Falcon use at the time of the original 2019 planning application. Wasn't fully resolved at that time, so that a condition was imposed to say how you could balance out the two uses. The condition that required the car park management plan always allowed, that was approved, that Falcon put forward and was approved by officers, was that there would be a split between some spaces in the car park being used by Falcon and some being provided in public use. The issue that came when the planning application came forward for them to regularise the resurfacing of the car park, that was when concerns arose about the impact on Greenbelt policy, other policies and issues that Rob's just spoken to. So to resolve that, it was looked at to close that part of the car park. The issue that's come since is that a number of public groups not related to Falcon have also suggested that they've been disenfranchised by the closing of the car park and making this more private for them. It was never the intention for it to fully be private for Falcon Rowing Club, and it's probably unreasonable for them to expect it to be given over entirely for them when historically it has had some level of public use. So the purpose of the application is to try to rebalance that. The council have already tried to discuss with Falcon about having a lease arrangement for certain spaces, and as you've heard today, are open to talking about permits in place. But the real issue comes from is to find that balance between those people, and we've had significant representations on both sides of the fence on this application to make sure that other members of the public who may want to park here to access the river, access other parts of this area, aren't disenfranchised. So yes, we could the council can do that. It would be outside the planning process, but it is open to Falcon to also discuss that reasonably with the landowner.
Councillor Fry, I think you're the next person.
Thank you very much. I'm just interested to hear from the Falcon Club. It sounds as if they've been offered a variety of 100% lease, partial lease. What was your objection to those offers? You can come up to the table.
James, can you go through the chair? But yeah, Mr. Brown, if you could come forward, and it would be useful just to know about your operational needs and how many spaces.
So this is discussion probably.
Sorry, Chair.
Sorry.
Chair, can I just come in? We can answer the question. Obviously, this does stray into sort of non-planning related matters, but again, happy to hear the question.
There was a discussion about 3 years ago where, yes, the lease was put forward and the rate was based on Redbridge Park and Ride, so it's going to be about £30,000 a year, which was ridiculous. We're a charity. We've got, we're trying to keep our membership fees low. We can't afford that. In terms of the number of spaces, we have over 40 coaches in the club, so 8 spaces is not going to do it for us. And the big question for me is, does this condition of 35 spaces from our building, the condition for building where we have to be able to supply 35 spaces, how are we going to do that if half those spaces are taken by other people?
Ultimately, you have to question the car park management plan that was put forward by the Rowing Club for approval suggests that 35 spaces of this car park, which they don't own, will be given over and managed, and that has to be with the agreement of the council who own the car park. So ultimately, there's always been an element of shared use, and how in terms of how that could be enforced, how that could reasonably be managed, you have to start to question. That's why there needs to be dialogue, open dialogue between both parties. But I would go, the responsibility also lies with Falcon to be open in terms of the dialogue with the council as a landowner who are gifting them, or not gifting them, but coming up to or going to arrange an agreement with them to use some of these spaces. So there needs to be permit arrangements, that they need to discuss whether there's permit arrangements is another solution, but the whole manner of solution around balancing out the need of the rowing club and the need of the public needs to be thought through. And that's what we're talking about.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hunt.
I'm very familiar with this car park, having lived in the area, and can talk really to when there was a much smaller rowing club, and it was a very low-key, charming dirt car park, and we used to use it to take my daughter to Sea Scouts, to canoe every night in the river, to swim and so forth. And it does seem to me that there's now obviously a tension around car parking spaces, which is the Oxford story, partly perhaps because of the expansion and development of the Falcon Club. I know that parking is very difficult in Oxford, and I cycle through there, daily, and see all the pavement car parking, which is a problem. But it does seem to me, in terms of the intention of the council, that it is about reverting this car park to what it previously was, which was when we could park there ad hoc, when the community and different community groups and the Sea Scouts and the schools and so on could try and find somewhere to park, to use these different resources.
Yeah, but the difference here is that it would be charging, and I think that's quite a significant change, isn't it? Yeah. Questions? Councillor Fairweather. Councillor Fairweather, is this a question?
Yes. I had a very quick look at the local plan today, and I wondered whether there were any guidelines about the number of disabled spaces and the number of bike racks that have been provided, because I notice it's actually gone down from 5 to 4.
Is that the disabled spaces or the bike?
The disabled spaces, I'm not sure
There's
what there are currently.
Although 2 are proposed, that's obviously
If this was going to be a new car park, would 2 be the normal figure to be used?
So currently, Chair, through There are currently no disabled spaces there, I don't believe, but there are 2 proposed as part of this application. I don't think we would have a prescriptive number in terms of a percentage. It's just on a case-by-case basis, but you would typically see that, and that is proposed as part of this.
And cycle spaces now and as proposed, is there any change?
There's actually no change proposed. I think there's currently 4 Sheffield stands and there's still going to be 4 Sheffield stands, so space to park 8 bikes. It's possibly worth mentioning as well, Falcon have a huge number of cycle parking spaces, which I've seen to be very well used when I visited the site.
Okay. Thank you. So, Councillor Raymond.
Just a quick one. Just to be clear, the previous planning application that had the travel plan, that's separate. That shouldn't have any bearing on today. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? Reference was made to people using the 2-hour free spaces there. I understand that it's a 7-day-a-week CPZ in the area, so there wouldn't be any sort of any particular problems with weekend use. But I just wondered how many 2-hour free spaces there are in the area. Are there plenty? Does anyone know?
So along.
Okay.
Slightly unconventionally, I'll take that because it's in my ward. Yes, there are quite a lot in the area. I mean, there was 500 car parking spaces in Iffley Fields, of all of which is 2 hours. So it depends what you define as the area. But yes, there are a lot which are quite full. I'm not sure what the capacity is. There is more capacity at weekends because people tend to go away. But that's not an official officer response, obviously.
That's just useful to get an indication. Okay. Councillor Fry.
I mean, just to understand, maybe come back to the Falcon Club. When are the key peak times for your use? I mean, I'm just wondering whether if you're looking at people who are wanting to park from outside, do your times clash or do you complement one another?
Well, it's something that I have been wondering about, whether you could be paying display during the week 9 to 5, but then for us at the rest, because our peak times are weekends and evenings during the week. So and we're very willing to talk and work with the council, but to work with the council, you need to talk to us. And that's been lacking really, really bad. And you're just putting us into a position where we don't know what the future is. And we've got all these members and there's a lot of anxiety about what's going to happen.
So, what do you think your operational need is generally in terms of parking spaces? Just to get an idea of that and the size of this car park.
The car park used to be a lot bigger in the times when it was being shared. So I say, when I joined about 20 years ago, you could probably get 50 cars in the old before it was tarmac car park. There was, for some reason, when it was resurfaced with that planning permission, and then when the retrospective planning permission went in, for some reason, it was reduced in size there. And there's a statement in the planning which said, oh, it was likely to have been increased. And I think when you use the word likely as a council, it probably means you don't know. But I know that 20 years ago it was bigger.
That's helpful, right?
Sorry, Chair, can I just
Yes.
to make a point on that? I think Councillor Hunt's made the point, and a number of us probably used that car park when it was unmade ground. There was just no control. There's no active spaces marked out. So it's a free for all in terms of parking. And you know there you're likely to get more vehicles on, aren't you? But ultimately that wasn't necessarily a safe modern way to deal with parking. So naturally, when the resurfacing happened, and yes, the resurfacing happened without planning permission and had to be regularised, but demarcating modern spaces, you're going to naturally see a reduction in the amount of vehicles you may get on that car park. But I think you know, when you're talking about what it used to be able to accommodate, that's because it was unmade ground. It was a free for all. Effectively, that doesn't mean it's safe in highway terms, does it?
Thank you. Okay. Oh, there's a question. I can't see any more questions. Perhaps we do move into debate now. I think yeah, Councillor Henwood, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So, I mean, I think the Treasurer has made it clear that evenings and weekends are a key time for the club. There are also big events like the regatta that happens once a year, where groups like the Scouts, for example, use the car park and the facilities, and they produce, I think they earn about £1,000 a year, which is their yearly income. So any infringement upon that will have a severe impact upon those smaller groups that depend upon those larger events that happen at the club. So I would like to propose, Chair, later to defer this decision this evening, to give the opportunity for Falcon Rowing Club and officers to have a meaningful discussion and bring back a application or this application at a later date. Thank you.
Can I just ask on what grounds? Because this is obviously the planning application is about usage. What it isn't about is about permits and things like that, and those discussions, which
Well, I think there's an opportunity, Chair, that both parties can have a detailed conversation about operation use, the type of charges that will be implied or applied, and when and how flexible those parking systems could be, given the larger events that happen in the summer, like the regatta, for example, where we do want to have a successful regatta with public participation as well. So it just gives that opportunity for our two groups to talk and to see if we can get to a decision that's amicable to both parties.
Okay, thank you. I think Andrew wants to come in, then I think Altaf, and then
just on the point about deferment, I don't necessarily think that's a reasonable ground to defer the application. Your members can obviously discuss that, and that is for them to discuss. I think, just to bear in mind, the comment about meaningful consultation's been used today. I think you have to work. It's been used, and that's one of the reasons to defer it, is to have consultation between the two parties. What I would say is that the Falcon Rowing Club was approved in and around 2019. There's a condition on there about car park management. The council own the car park, and in terms of the management plan that was put forward to be approved by Falcon, still didn't have necessarily agreement from the landowner to be able to use the car park in the manner in which they're looking to use it. So there has been discussion through that period of time. The consultation for this planning application is completely different to that point. And I don't necessarily consider that it would be reasonable to withhold the decision-making process on this planning application to deal with an agreement between the landowner and Falcon Rowing Club. You've got a decision to be made here on the planning application. It's set out in the report. That's separate to those kind of discussions. Both parties have heard what's been said today, and so you would expect them to have that kind of discussion. And there is the condition in place on the 2019 application, which they need to come to some resolution over. But I don't think that's necessarily a reason to defer the application. But it's obviously for members to decide.
Yes, so essentially the question that we are being asked is, do we support a change of use which would allow public access to this car park? But anyway.
Sorry, Chair, not to be clear, not a change of use, because the use is still staying the same. This is simply about allowing access to the general public, which would align with the condition that was approved on the 2019 application, and also allows for that public access that also other communities will be able to use the car park.
Councillor Altaf Khan.
Chair, as I understood, it is a retrospective application after the surface. So whatever the discussion happens, the space is not going to shrink or expand. It's going to stay as it is. And this discussion between the landowner and the club, that could continue after this as well. And they can change the term, condition, usage, everything. But the two parties, the landowner and the club user. So for application in front of us is the a new tarmac place, which is a
That's
car
already
park,
happened.
to be used.
The retrospective planning application was approved, I think,
Yeah.
in 2019,
2021.
2021, yeah. But this is about allowing public access to that
Yeah,
car
yeah,
park.
but that
And it's
car-
not about the resurfacing itself, because that has been approved.
That is approved, so
Yeah.
it's still the landowner and the club can discuss who to use and what term and condition, what payment, free, whatever. Those are not going to be a planning conditions, are they? They are not in planning application. So I can't see any reason for deferral. I strongly see the application in front of us. And as I said, the space is still same, whether is enough or not enough. That has to be discussed, how that the made of use of that between the council and the Falcon Rowing Club. So that discussion could continue. There could come some sort of agreement. So I don't think a deferral is needed, and I don't see many planning points here in this discussion. A lot of discussion is happening about how much is going to be charged, whether it is sufficient, use, not use, who's going to park, who's not going to park. So those things are not going to be controlled by planning. This is landowner and the user. So we leave that as it is, I think, and take this as application as on the face value of it.
Mr. Barnett, now that we're in discussion, if you could go and sit down again while we discuss the application. I'd call you to the front initially so that you could answer questions. Is that okay? No, sorry. I've got Councillor Kerr, Councillor Fairweather and Councillor Raymond.
So my comment are, this has been a public car park since the 1970s, which has allowed all people in the area to use it equally. This proposal would make it the same, a paid public car park, which all groups in the area could use equally. So whether you are the children who play football on a Saturday morning, that need to pay to have visitors play with them, whether you are rowing on the river, whether you are part of Falcon, people would all be able to use it equally. I have strong reservations about giving one group free rights to a public space which is publicly owned by the council over other groups. I support the idea, as is policy, of paying for car parking, which I think we should do. I think there is potentially some flex for the landowner to allocate spaces, as has been discussed. That's the council qua landowner, not qua planning. So that's a separate issue completely, which has been raised. But and maybe that is a discussion. But fairly, I guess my fundamental point is that this has historically been a public space. It should remain a public space with all groups treated equally and everybody having to pay. And so I'm happy to move a proposal when it's ready to propose that I support this planning application. But we might not be there yet. But when we are, I'll do it.
The other comments, but yes, we've got proposal on the table. Yeah, thank you. Councillor Fairweather.
I think Councillor Kerr has actually covered all the points I was going to make. And I would like to second her proposal. I feel very strongly that this is returning a public asset to use by the public. And there are all sorts of people who want access to the river who could use this car park, and therefore it should be returned to public access.
Thank you. Councillor Raymond.
Yeah, I don't know what to say really. I agree with the last two speakers totally. I think actually once this application is decided, it'll actually help the club, and unfortunately its success as member, you've got so many more members, but it is a public space. It is the landowner who can decide. And if I want to come down from Headington, I hope that I could park as well and pay for it. So I think it should be open to all the public. It's just a shame that, well done for having a successful club. However, everything has to be free and equal. So on that basis, I go with the proposal on the basis that I'm sure once this is in place, there'll be more concentrated effort between the club and the landowner to have a discussion where they can get to a point quickly, because probably at the moment there's a massive gap because there's hope that we could have it or we're not going to do something. So I think this will actually bring it to a conclusion.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Hunt, do you want to come back?
I was just going to also support this application and say I do sympathise with the loss of the car parking spaces, and I do, as I said, remember when it went from this great, slightly rough ground area where there were many more car parking areas, and it is the issue with Oxford. But I do support this application and the reversion back to it being of public use, community use.
Councillor Fry, do you want to come back?
I mean, I guess I have a question. I mean, my real concern is it sounds as if the peak times, I mean, the weekends are an issue, but the peak times during weekdays sound as if it's when there won't be heavy demand from the public. Now, one could leave it just to chance, but I wonder whether it is possible to have a condition, and is this outside the planning process, to say that after a certain hour, this becomes the exclusive use of the club, because that sounds as if that's when their need is greatest during the weekdays from what we've been told. At the weekends, I can see something would need to be arranged, but I am seriously worried that if we just approve it as it is, it'll be first come, first served in terms of car parking space. And what will the club do?
Rob, do you want to come back?
So there's a condition included in the recommendation which seeks the sort of the management of the car park to be approved by officers if members grant this application. We can take on board the concerns, and know that obviously my colleague is here tonight from our corporate assets team. So when those details are submitted to us, we can certainly consider the point made about how those kind of peak hour uses are resolved in terms of demand. And that can be considered as part of this. Clearly, the rationale for the condition is about commuter parking. I would think that that marrying those two issues up would be sensible.
Emily, do you want to come back? And then I think...
Oh, no, it's just a comment on that, which is that you should also consider the other provision that's in the area. So that's, in terms of peak parking.
We've got a proposal on the table to accept the application, the officer's recommendation, and that has been seconded. Can we see all those in favour of the application? And is there anybody against? Okay, so that is carried. Given the extensive comments about the needs of the club, I think all I can do, and I think that other members of the committee will support me, is that we need to make this an absolute priority to discuss with Falcon and also with other sort of established groups that use the car park to agree a sensible usage plan, perhaps permits and concessions, and look at the different uses at different times of the day to maximise the use of the car park, but also to enable these fantastic sporting clubs run by volunteers to continue to do their great work. Thank you for that. Thank you. Okay. I think we can start because Andrew's not presenting. Okay, so we'll move on to the second application this evening, which is 152 London Road in Headington, and Tracy Harvey present.
Thank you, Chair. This is a full planning application for the redevelopment of an existing commercial use, which is Class E site on the corner of London Road and Star Road within the Headington District Centre. Since the agenda has been prepared, late representations have been received from the adjoining primary school and the applicants. The primary school within their representations have said that the planning conditions address their main concerns about the demolition and construction phases. The school has, however, raised detailed questions about the proposed conditions. Members will know the site as it's currently occupied by a co-op and post office. The proposals for the redevelopment are for a 2- and 3-story building with a basement for research and development purposes and offices. Members will see from the report that considerable local objection has been received in connection with the scheme. This has predominantly raised the loss of the shop and the post offices, which, and as outlined in these representations, are clearly valued local community facilities. However, in this case, there are no planning controls which would prevent the closure of the shop and post office at any point. Members will be aware that both the existing use, so retail and post office, and the new development, research and offices are both in the same use class, which means that planning permission is not required for a change of use. So in theory, the existing building could be used today for offices and research purposes. So you will note from the report that the majority of the discussion has hence been around the impacts and design of the proposals. Members will see that concerns have been raised by Oxfordshire County Council Children's Services and the adjoining St Andrew's Primary School, which is shown on the aerial photograph to the right of 152 London Road. As set out in the report, officers have considered the rights of the child under the UN Convention. A number of planning conditions are proposed to take into account the concerns where they are material planning considerations. For example, suggested condition number 5 looks to avoid demolition with two previous applications on this site for retail and hotel use. The most relevant application for consideration tonight was a scheme which was refused on appeal to the planning inspectorate in January 2024. The planning inspector's main concern in relation to that scheme was the building's height, bulk, design and siting of a hotel building on the adjoining primary school. So this is the primary school in question immediately in the centre of the photograph. The primary school is a non-designated heritage asset, and the planning inspector's decision is attached to Appendix 2. Compared to the appeal scheme, the current proposals have reduced the height and overall bulk of the building by the introduction of pitch roofs and gables on the London Road and Star Road frontages. So I've been going through the slides steadily as I've been talking. This is the nearest residential property in Stile Road. Proposed ground floor. And here you can see the articulation by the use of gables within the roof structure. Members will recall that the hotel scheme was essentially a square, rectangular, flat roof building. And here again, we see the introduction of these articulated gables within the fenestration. So we have the view here from the south, which is from Star Road. To the right of the central red square, you see there is a new plant area, which is flat roof. So there are some areas of flat roof within the development, including 2 areas of green roofs. This is the elevation towards the primary school. And I'm not sure if members can quite pick it out, but there is a slight reduction in the overall height compared to the existing building along this boundary. And again, further elevations. In this case, the one on the right-hand side shows proposed solar panels. Floor plans, which includes basement cycle parking. And again, ground floor plan, which has visitors cycle parking to the front and staff parking, including for cargo bikes, to the rear of the site adjacent to number 5 Stile Road. Again, we can see clearly on this picture in the center there, you see some small circles, and that is the proposed plant area. And again, a roof plan showing the upper floors of the building. Revised plans have been received during the course of the application, which shows some of the design detail that was requested by the council's urban design officer. So straightforward here, we have illustrative elevations along the various street scenes, and then of the internal courtyard. Now, in the bottom right, you see a couple of figures there. One of the comments raised by the Highway Authority is about a pinch point of access to get bicycles in to this courtyard, and the pinch point is where a proposed planter is. Now, there's 4 outstanding points that members will have picked up from the report itself. There is concerns raised who will maintain the sustainable urban drainage system, which again can be addressed by a condition. The lack of safe access, which again is these pinch points and details of where the dropped curbs will be in the highway. Inadequate cycle parking, and that's about the design of the cycle parking, particularly within the basement area. And there has also been a question about the drainage calculations. Now, officers consider that all of these points can be addressed within the proposed conditions, and none of them are of a significant merit to warrant a recommendation of refusal. Overall, it is considered that this scheme addresses the concerns raised by the planning inspector on design grounds and impact on the school, which came up as part of the refused hotel scheme. In this case, the proposals are felt to be an appropriate design response, which does not adversely affect the setting of the conservation area, St Andrews Primary School, Bury Knoll Park or its listed wall, or the long-range city views, or the location on the edge of the district centre. Officers have considered the highway implications for the development and have suggested Section 106 and conditions. As set out in the officer report, officers consider that the development is acceptable in planning terms. Subject to the draft conditions and Section 106, both of which remain under discussion with the applicants, the planning application is recommended to the committee for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tracy. We've now got two speakers, Councillor Chris Smoten against the application and Nick Lisber and Chris Hale in support. Councillor Smoten, could you come forward now?
Thank you very much, Chair. I will speak very briefly with my councillor hat on, but then will primarily be speaking as a community governor at St Andrews School. Yes, my brief remarks for my own part. I'd say, as a councillor, by far the biggest concern is the loss of the post office, but as our officer has noted, specifically a post office could never be protected because it's a business decision that never would have required planning permission, and that as of the 2020 changes to the use class schedule, then it's no longer possible even to protect the retail unit, which would have been before that because it would have been a different use class. We have Robert Jenrick to thank for that one. So anybody who happens to have the ear of a minister at the Department for Local Government might perhaps mention this is an example of consequence of the merger of those two use classes. I'd also briefly note, and I wonder if we might take a lesson, that the previous application that was refused for bulk and massing would have retained the retail unit. This is now reduced in bulk and massing, and the specific bulk and massing that have gone was the retail unit, which I think is quite regrettable. Switching hats then, as I say, I'm a community governor at St Andrews School, which immediately abuts the site. The nearest classrooms at St Andrews are 3 metres away from the boundary, and the school also has 42 children with special educational needs of one kind or another, so is both very proximal and also has a lot of people who are potentially very sensitive to the effects, especially of demolition and construction. The school is neutral about the principle of the matter, and so insofar as I'm in the opposition slot here, this is a case of wanting to have conditions that are sufficiently binding and sufficiently specific as to ensure that effects on the school are minimised and if possible, entirely neutralised. We draw particular attention to conditions 3 and 5 that relate to these matters, and particularly how condition 5 can be made as specific and as binding as possible. The key matters for concern are dust, the impact on children who have asthma, and the general vulnerability of children, by and large, regardless of whether they have any specific vulnerability. We would therefore suggest that a baseline air quality assessment would be appropriate, so that air quality assessments during the demolition and construction process have a baseline against which to measure. On a similar basis, noise, again, the effects of noise on the school could potentially be quite large. So again, being able to measure the baseline and therefore quantify what is the actual impact on the school and its operations would be extremely welcome. Moving on to safeguarding, then details of all activities that are potentially affecting safeguarding of children at the school would need to be reviewed and approved by the school in advance of the demolition and building activity commencing. That right route for that might be ensuring that the school is actively engaged in when it comes to submissions to satisfy conditions. The applications to discharge or satisfy conditions are often not not very prominent to councillors, but if there was an effort to directly reach out to the school in the process of conditioned discharge, I know that would be extremely welcome and would improve the situation a lot, and it would certainly save me from having to simply search the matter on the planning website once a day so as to detect when the relevant submissions come in. School liaison, along similar lines, we'd feel that a comprehensive liaison plan with the school would be required and appropriate, which should detail communication, how that communication takes place, how notifications are given of potentially disruptive activities, and emergency contact arrangements to deal with anything which is having an outsized impact compared to what was expected. The school should also have access to those air quality and noise monitoring insofar as those are able to be secured. If the application is approved, close cooperation between the school, the developers and Oxford City Planning will undoubtedly be necessary and welcomed and actively engaged in by both governors and staff at the school. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If you could sit down, and then if Mr. Lisber and Mr. Hale could come forward. You have 5 minutes between you, so I assume that you divvied that up. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Nick Lisber, I'm the planning consultant. I'm not going to say too much because you've had a very full report. You've had a verbal report as well just now. First, we're pleased to hear the school's comments as a result of the conditions that are proposed, and some of those conditions relate to us reaching out to the school. We had a meeting with them and we invited the planning officer to impose some of the conditions. As you've heard, the principle of the use that's proposed, it is consistent with your policies. And what this scheme seeks to do in relation to that is make the best use of the land whilst respecting the views that the inspector came to in relation to the earlier scheme, which was dismissed on appeal. Since that appeal, we had pre-app discussions with the council's planning officers and also the urban designer. And as a consequence of that, we made adjustments to the scheme that they saw in order to meet the comments that they made to us. The building form closest to the school is, as you've seen, more or less the same as the existing building that runs along the boundary of the school. The higher parts of the building are about 20 metres away along that similar axis. Just to add a little bit of detail in relation to the detail that you've had in your report. So far as the biodiversity net gain is concerned, you'll know that the site is more or less covered with buildings and hard surfaces, and it's not too difficult to produce some biodiversity gains in relation to the site, but overall, the gain is significant. It's about a 53% gain in biodiversity that's proposed as a result of the landscaping and the green roofs that are proposed. So far as the energy requirements is concerned, the report says that we meet the 40%. In fact, we exceed that. In terms of the reduction in regulated carbon emissions, it's about a 58% reduction, and there's a 60% saving in energy consumption compared with the 2021 building regulations. We're pleased that the councillor that just spoke has referred to the various elements of the conditions that are imposed. We've indicated to the school that our clients are very happy to speak to them. A lot of the detail will be covered in the construction environmental management plan, and also they're covered in the considerate contractors plan, in particular the way in which the school would be involved in the discussions and will be notified when certain things are likely to occur. And we've said to the school that so far as controlling dust and other things are concerned and the time that demolition and other works will take place, there will be liaison with them throughout the process, and that will be part of the CMPT. I'll leave my colleague to talk to you about the architecture.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for receiving us this evening. The scheme, we weren't involved in the previous scheme, the hotel site. I'm a resident of Headington myself, walk past the site every single day. My offices are nearby, so we're obviously passionate that we get the right solution for residents, because I have to live there as much as, and I'm sure this will cause all kinds of things, all kinds of comments. Now, we started, can I address the post office issue? Because the co-op is vacating the site. So that's a commercial, it's not planning. You know, it's nothing to do with us bringing forward a scheme. It's not in developers' control to do that. So, I mean, we could end up with a vacant site, you know, next year and empty and not having any function and deteriorating. So we should accept that the long-term process is taken. This is a really important site that needs something to go back on it. The idea that you could reuse those buildings for any of these use classes, it makes no sense whatsoever. That it used to be a garage site and it's been modified over the years and isn't really suitable for any other function, you know, than that. Are we running over?
Hale, I think your 5 minutes is the 5 minutes is about up. Have you got
Any questions?
just a concluding sentence?
Well, I could explain how we basically went back to first principles at the point after appeal and reduced the mass down to design a residential scale building that addressed all of the issues we could. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And if you can be around in case of any specific questions.
Yeah, should we just?
Questions, Councillor, Taylor, Khan, Henwood, Foulweather and Railton.
In 9.74 on the report, it says one of the major deficiencies of the proposal is the lack of stated purpose of the project, criticising the vagueness of research and development. Chair, could the speakers please make clearer what the purpose of the project might be?
Are you able to do that at this stage?
No, it's a speculative proposal for research and development and offices. There's no tenant at the moment, no tenants coming forward. And this is fairly common in relation to this sort of proposal. So no, I can't tell you precisely what use there will be, other than it will be for a research and development or office use. Those uses, as your report says, are controlled, and they're controlled in a way that makes sure that the use is one that can be carried out in a residential area without causing problems of noise, dust, ash, grit, and various other things, which you'll find in the officer's report.
Thank you. Yeah,
Can I make one
that's helpful. I mean, we
observation?
have had a number of applications like this in recent years because of the interest in increased research and development in the city, and several of these have been speculative. Sorry.
It's okay. I was just going to say, I mean, the architecture wouldn't lend itself to a wet lab, you know, something that has extracts, because we'd have 3 meter extracts. So it's going to be a digital environment, you know, whether it be office or research, and that use class is very wide, obviously, because we're moving from wet labs to other kinds of research. So there won't be fumes coming out.
It's helpful. Thank you. Councillor Khan.
2-3 questions. First, the loss of a retail unit or the post office, I understand is the same class as previously, so there's not much control from the council. But I would like to ask, the Headington neighbourhood plan does talk about the district, and we have separately spoken to the council officers in the past about some sort of control of the shopping districts and what is needed there or what is not needed there. So where does the planning people think the Headington neighbourhood plan talks about? that and what sort of weight they have on the planning. And it is said that it is the post office and the retail unit is going. My second question is regarding these county council's objections. They object on two things. And in 9.42 and 9.43, the 9.43 where they have objected about the cycle parking and the transport side of it. And the officer's comment is that despite the objections, we are asking for Section 106 agreement, which you think it will mitigate the impact. But if infrastructure is already built and you got some money and there's not enough cycle parking, so how that's going to mitigate? That's quite a sort of a dilemma to understand. So at this time, as a planning control of the planning authority needed to make sure the right infrastructure is there. And yes, the impact on the road user, other things helps the Section 106. So is that plus I do see there is a car parking free, it says car free development. And on looking at the planning terms and planning grants, we have some other buildings car free development in Headington, and there has been breaches, and even people went to appeal as well. So how confident are we at this stage or this development is going to be I would say watertight, that it doesn't break that car free, and then later stage, how are we going to monitor controlled extra car people coming, traveling into Headington? My last and final question, is somebody can please little bit explain about this noise and the third impact or assessments. There are a couple of assessments, the noise assessment and things mentioned in the report, and especially during the construction because of the school and the parents or user by. So how is that going to be the pollution, the noise? You got to remember the people have to live there, and the school and the rest of life need to continue while this going. So how this management plan is going to be more effective, active, and ensuring the school and the residents is not going to impact on them. So quite a few things. Please, could you explain those? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. If I do them in reverse order, so apologies, Councillor Khan. So do prompt me if I miss any out. So in relation to the noise assessment, members may have spotted there is a bespoke condition on here, condition 5. The noisy stage of the development, as you've quite rightly pointed out, Councillor, is probably demolition and construction. So we've got a bespoke condition here, which includes details of no demolition during the term time school hours of St Andrew's Church of England Primary School, which has actually been agreed with the applicants. So that means that the particular noisy activities won't be happening whilst educational classes are being taught. So that will help protect the children. And there's a whole raft of issues here about when certain activities can take place, including deliveries to the site and construction. So the idea is that that condition will protect the neighbouring residents, including the school, from significant areas of disturbance. So you'll also spot that the condition includes discussion with the primary school and other interested parties, so that there are details of who to actually contact, who's responsible for the site works, so that if there are any unforeseen issues, perhaps with noise or dust or construction activities, then it is very clear to all parties who they need to contact and speak to get that resolved. So there are a number of conditions here which actually set out measures during particularly the construction phase to mitigate impacts on the area. Turning to the County Council's concerns about the cycle parking, there is more than sufficient parking, cycle parking on the site. So it goes beyond the number of spaces that are required. Now, Highway's concern has been the actual design of the parking. So one of the areas that we produce as a city council a technical advice note on is the design of cycle storage. So the county council are not supporting the type of cycle storage which is within the application and is also contained within the council's adopted policy. So there is probably a technical disagreement here. So it's not about the number of spaces, but it's how they're laid out and designed. So what we have added in is a condition which requires the detailed design of the cycle stands to be submitted to the City Council for agreement. So hopefully that picks up that point. One of the other things that you've raised is that ensuring that this is a car-free development. And again, the Section 106 will help this, as well as the reduction in on-site parking. So whilst a roadside lay-by is maintained, that's reduced in size for EV, cycle and scooter parking. And also the frontage car parking has been removed. So all we are left with is the servicing parking within the rear service yard, which again is the space for about 2 nose-to-tail cars or a delivery lorry. So the technical aspects have actually been picked up here. And we've done as much as we possibly can to ensure it is a car-free development and will remain so in the future. Now, this is a very well-used road. Headington District Centre is very well used, and again, it's got good public transport access. Turning to your first point, the loss of the retail unit, it is, as you quite rightly say, within the same use class order, and in planning terms, we have got no control over this. Now, there is a tension which you've picked up here. Within the National Planning Policy Framework, the government still requires local plans and development plans, such as neighbourhood plans, to allocate or identify areas for retail development. But there is no such thing anymore in planning use class terms as retail development. It's all commercial use. So we've got a tension between what the legislation says we can control and what the government is seeking for us to control in planning policy terms. So the Headington Neighbourhood Plan and the Oxford City Plan both quite rightly seek to maintain retail space, wherein, because that's what the national position says, but actually in legislative terms, local planning authorities have very little opportunity to control this change between uses within Class E, which is commercial use. So that includes offices, what used to be the old light industrial, retail, things like estate agents. So they're all in this wider grouping. So unfortunately, the planning policy gives us one approach, but the legislation doesn't, in my view, enable us to control it to the degree that historically we could do. Thank you, Chair.
One small point, can I ask?
Yes.
Style Road number 5 and 7, where it is 2-story. Can you please bring that picture back again? And the impact on those properties, how do you see that? Because they are just only few meters away from the current co-op drive where they drop the goods, and the first house, which is I think number 5 and 7, Style Road. The impact on those properties, if you could please bring that picture, and I would like to see, because has been concern, and obviously they are the residential properties. Yeah.
Chair, just before Tracy comes back on that point, well, guess what? She's getting up the plans. I mean, the report does cover a lot of the questions that we've had just now, including this one on impact on the adjoining properties, does cover in quite some detail how we've assessed and balanced out these issues. So it may be for the interest of brevity and to help you, what specifically are you looking for the officer to guide you on with regards to 5 and 7 Style Road that isn't in the report?
I'm asking the distance between this is 2-story and the first house on Style Road. What is the distance that obviously adjoining and makes the impact or effect? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the houses in Style Road, in particular number 5, which we can see to the right-hand side on the screen here, just in the white silhouetted. Those houses are approximately 8 metres in height. And then you see to the left-hand side of that, you see the first gable of the new building. And that gable is 7 metres in height. Now, the distance from the side with number 5 is approximately 8 metres. So there, and that has actually been significantly improved since the previous scheme. So what we have here is actually a stepping down along the Style Road frontage of the properties towards the height. So we see the 2 gables in the middle, and they're about 11 metres in height, with the roof sloping down to a 7-metre gable, and then number 8 Style Road is about 8 metres itself. So we have got an improved situation. Now, the previous scheme actually removed the entirety of the building, which is behind Style Road, between Style Road and the school. However, as part of this scheme, what's happening is the existing boundary walls are being retained. So whilst there is not, say, an improvement to the amenity, there is no significant reduction in the amenity to either 5 or 7 Style Road, in my view. I have got some concerns. There are a couple of roof lights. So we see this pair of gables in the middle, and there is 2 roof lights here. which would look towards the side elevation of Stile Road. So there is a condition which requires the submission of an overlooking strategy to minimise both the impacts on relation to overlooking for both the school and the properties in Stile Road.
Councillor Henwood.
So, Chair, my concern, especially with my experience with Armstrong Road, is that the build was able to commence from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. On weekends as well. So I would like, in the case of installing the pilings, to have consideration for the school next door, especially not just in noise, but also in vibration as well, please.
Tracy, do you want to come back on that?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, turning back to condition 5, any activities audible beyond the site boundary shall be restricted to 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Saturdays, and at no time on Sundays or bank holidays. So I think that probably picks up your concerns there, Councillor.
So just to make it clear, then the pilings will go in between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m.
Yes.
That's
okay.
Wow.
To that on the discussion, okay. Councillor Fairweather.
No, thank you, Chair. My question is about air source heat pumps. These will be industrial strength units, no doubt. Are the officers quite happy that once the building is up and running, that these will not generate excessive noise and disturb local residents and the school? And my second question, can I assume that the overlooking mitigation strategy is covered by, which is mentioned in 10.154. Is this the strategy that's mentioned under condition 31?
Yes, yeah. Thank you, Chair. Yeah. So doing it the reverse order as well, so apologies, Councillor. We have got 2 different conditions here. We've got condition 31, as you rightly say, is a strategy for the reduction of or inclusion of obscure glazing and a reduction of overlooking. So that is condition 31. And that does include long-term safeguarding. We have also got condition 5, which picks up overlooking during the construction period as well. So you'll notice that 31 is a condition which is to be discharged prior to use / occupation. So there are 2 different amenity considerations. So normally we would control overlooking from the built structure. In this case, we've incorporated it within the construction phase as well because of the sensitivity with the school site. In relation to the air source heat pumps, I've turned to one of the photographs, and sorry, you may have to go by my description. So in the centre of the proposals here, we've got 3 double roof lights. Now you can see a long structure above that, which is very narrow. Now that is the edge of the enclosed plant area. So that area is actually enclosed by the physical structure of the building. Now, if there is a problem post-construction from noise from those air source heat pumps, that can be picked up within the usual environmental health legislation and their noise complaint process. So we're not anticipating any by the way that the building has actually been designed, but that can be picked up during through the normal noise complaints process.
Chair, just to add, there is also condition 27, which deals with noise and details from the proposed plant installation and ducting at the development, which would also cover that.
Firstly, I guess I should actually declare an interest in that the councillor speaking against this proposal is actually my husband. We have not discussed this planning application to the extent that I didn't even know he was coming to speak on this planning application. And I'd also forgotten that he was a governor of the school next door. So brilliant all round from me. So I would just, so if that's acceptable, I'll go on. So I'd just like to say 10.23, I would just like to express my gratitude for actually showing the difference between the previous application and the current one. Often we're like left guessing and trying to work it out. So this was actually super useful and very welcome. I'd like to see more of that. Actually, it's really helpful. So my actual question is, there's lots of discussion in the report about views from Earlsfield. I kind of went on Google Street Maps and looked, on like at Earlsfield and looked, tried to find the co-op, couldn't find the co-op. I tried to find it in the report, in the documents. I couldn't find anything about what these views actually were meant to be and what the difference was and all this kind of thing. So if anybody's actually can find them and show them on the screen, that would actually be very welcome, just because it came up a surprising amount and I wasn't quite sure of what this impact was and what it wasn't. So that was my question. It's more reassurance within the report, councillor, that we have considered it and officers feel that there is no impact on the views.
Cool. Yes, so it's returning to a question that Councillor Altaf Khan raised. It's obviously very unusual that we get references here to inadequate cycle parking, simply because it's the kind of thing that people don't put in front of Oxford City planning committees these days. So I really would just like to explore that a bit more. So you've obviously referenced the TAN. Is that the March 22 TAN? Because if it is the Oxford City, then what the county is objecting to is double stacked cycle parking, which is very difficult to manage. But actually the city TAN from 22, it's 4 years old, does allow that to happen. And so I suppose I'm looking for reassurance, because it's not in the plans, that if there is some double stacking, that's one thing. If you've got 38 spaces, cycle parking spaces that are all double stacked, that is actually really difficult for people that are generally older, weaker to use. And therefore, I think it's a reasonable kind of, I don't know if you could comment on that, or possibly, the applicant could. And secondly, totally separately, 9.24, the asbestos question, I assume, because it looks like it is, that's fixed by the SEMP, the construction management. Can you clarify if that is the case?
Yes.
Good. That was easy. The TAN.
I will probably, with the chairman's permission, revert to the applicants, because I don't have details of the actual design of, in particularly, the cycle storage proposed within the basement area.
Yeah, please.
There's no double stacking at the moment that's proposed at all. If there's any issue with the design, because we've got cycle parking in the basement as well, the area that the cycle parking is within could be expanded if there's any issue in relation to the design not being liked by either your officers or the county. So there's sufficient space to always produce the amount of cycle parking that will comply with your standards.
Thank you.
Can I just follow up? So
Yeah.
so they're not the gas, they're the kind of, I saw you do a mine. They are the semi-vertical where you have one on grade and one bike goes up. That's on the ground floor. There's also cargo bike spaces there. There is a couple of Sheffield stands that we've put in on the ground floor, or in the area of the service yard. And in the basement, we've got sufficient, they're all standard sort of hoop type things. I think that was the last version that we drew. And we're quite happy, as we say, that space can expand and contract to suit. So.
Councillor Henwood, I think you wanted to come back.
Can I just come back to pilings again? Sorry, Chair. I'm just wondering whether the officer could possibly build in some flexibility around the construction phase. Could we possibly look at even the 6 o'clock start to 9 o'clock? Do the pilings then, and then in afternoon from 3 to 6, or extending it even later in the evening, avoiding school times?
Sure. I think you've got to be really careful. We can't go into, you know, a massive amount of detail to control to that element and degree when certain types of work needs to be undertaken. We've got the controls that you've put on numerous schemes across the city. You know, this wouldn't be the first instance where we've had development next to a school of some sort. You know, where there might well be piling. There was one along London Road, down near Dorset House, wasn't there? You know, so you know, we've put the suite of controls we're able to. Can't sit in this committee and decide on certain times that they can and can't do work. So
it's a suggestion, that's all.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to approve a planning application, not disapprove one. And I'm trying to work and find ways of mitigating noise to a very vulnerable school with over 40 SEND children.
I hear you, understand that. I understand the reason and rationale for it. It would be very difficult to refuse this application on the basis you couldn't agree certain times of construction.
Sorry, Chair, could I? I think the applicant is here and has heard that. I think what we could do is put an informative on that says that they should, you know, endeavour to discuss with the school times where, you know, those activities could take place. I mean, one thing to bear in mind is that the more you restrict the piling phase, the longer it will actually take, and you'd have that noise over a longer period. So sometimes it could be shorter and sweeter, but I think.
Okay. Well, let's come back to that during this discussion. I think we've heard that.
It was just a straightforward point. I've already said that our clients have met with the school and we've given them assurance that we will work with them in relation to both demolition and construction of this building to make sure that it has the minimal effect that we can have on the school and obviously its children.
That is the purpose of the considerate contractor scheme, is there should be weekly meetings, you know, with the main contractor, with the school, say next week we're going to be doing X, Y, Z. It's really difficult to put the demolition and the piling into a summer holiday because it's not long enough to do all of that work. But a considerate contractor, a good quality contractor will always make sure that's happening. Also worth recognising that most of the basement is as far away from St Andrew's School as possible, adjacent to the road. There is a bit that goes across towards that boundary, but it's not all of it. So I think as much as we can all do to make that work, it has been addressed.
Thank you. Do I see any more questions? I think I do. Okay, let's move into discussion, this application. Councillor Raymond.
Thank you, Chair. So I've heard the questions, and I was on the committee when the hotel was here, and that scheme was rejected, and then on appeal it got dismissed again. Because we've got a different scheme, I'm not sure that this scheme, although it's much improved compared to the hotel, still actually takes all our concerns into consideration. I mean, from Stile Road to Hollyoake Road, that part of the shopping precinct, all the buildings from, and I live in Headington as well, are quite low level. And then you can have this one, this building, although it's much smaller, less bulkier than that hotel. And I'm not trying to compare the two because this is much improved. However, I've read the appeal and I don't think that this actually still mitigates all the circumstances that the inspector had in the appeal. There's still lots of stuff. I think the inspector said something like, because of the obscure windows and stuff, and that was because of the bulk. And then we're talking about overlooking as well. I know the school's much happier with this one, but you know, school's only one part of that community. There's people that live on Star Road. There's people who live around it. So in our head, I think that so far we've got in the haste that because the last one was so poor, that this one's good. So therefore we've assumed that this one's going to go forward. So I just want to ask everyone to sort of consider this, and not in comparison to the hotel, because that was really really poor, but consider this and the appeal inspectorate's reasons for refusing that. And I'm not sure that it's covered all of them. So that's what I was saying.
It's worth remembering that we have to consider every application on its merits and whether the last one was good or bad. This is a new one and we just approach it fresh. Councillor Elton.
I would just, oh, sorry. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate officers have worked hard as from the previous application. Bulk of this has been reduced, is a lot better than previously what was. And Andrew, we agree and disagree with things, but I do think you have already worked hard on this application, so I appreciate that. But as previous speakers said, there are still concerns, and especially I am very much double-minded on this, where we talked about legislation, policy, and government conflict here. We have the Headington Neighbourhood Plan, which does talk about the Headington shopping districts, which made the part of the planning process. But I'm not too sure how the sum of other things override, and we can't give the weight on the usage of the shopping specialty district. We're not just talking about one use class building is okay, is class E, and it stays same as class E, but we are dealing with this shopping district. My other concern still remains that the county council, I understand, is about the design, but previously I do see and I hear always the county doesn't object or doesn't say much. When county started saying something, still there is a conflict here. Okay, they are not agreeing design. I heard there's enough space to create enough the parking, cycle parking spaces in the basement if there is needed. So that design doesn't matter, but there is, I think there's another point from the county as well. So in overall, I am not very much confident to support this for some of the reasons I said, but I do appreciate that it is a better improved scheme than previously, and the officers work on this. Thank you. Okay.
Councillor Elton.
I would just like to sort of offer a bit of dissent on those, the two previous speakers. I mean, I think, you know, certainly compared to what is currently there, the frontage on both London Road and Star Road is genuinely much better. You know, the frontage onto London Road at the moment is literally a blank piece of tarmac covered in car parking. The frontage onto Star Road is literally a huge, great big, like 1.5 story white wall, and you know, including a blank wall facing, you know, the two resident, like their sort of immediate neighbours. I mean, it's sort of it's an improvement over what is currently there. And I think, you know, there's been genuinely quite a lot of effort, you know, and, you know, also the rendering is much nicer. It's now brick instead of sort of white sort of, 90s core kind of cladding. I think every effort has been put in here to sort of make this sympathetic to the general streetscape and, with the roof line, with the stepping down towards the school, with the stepping down towards the residential. So I will be supporting this application.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt, then Councillor Kerr.
Yeah, I'll be supporting this application. It seems to me that a car-free work space in Headington is precisely what Oxford needs, particularly the car-free element. I don't know whether the 106 can in any way include improvements to a school, which would be marvellous. If you could insulate the school while you're building, that would be terrific. And it seems to me that we just need more Sheffield stands everywhere. So if that could be a condition, that would be great.
Councillor Kerr and then Councillor
I will be supporting this because I don't think there are any material planning reasons why we should reject it, and which I think is, one of the kind of key things we should be focusing on here. I agree that effort has been made. If I was given a free choice between this being a retail store and not, that I would choose a retail store, but that is not the situation we are in. It is a Class E. We have already discussed this. The legal framework is that it can be changed from a store to an office, and therefore I think the applicants have made an effort. I appreciate a number of the design points, and yeah, I will be supporting it because that's what I believe I have an obligation to do.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Building off of what Councillor Kerr said, I think the only actual material planning reason we've heard to decline the application is what AJ said about the area. It's out of character for the area, and that there's a lot of smaller shops on the high street. There are some small shops on the high street, but there's also quite a few shops like the Sainsbury's, like the Tesco's, quite a few shops along there that have houses above them, and it's actually an area that has become quite intensified and quite built up quite a bit further. And I actually disagree that it will be out of character with how the high street has actually become in Headington. So I am in support of the application.
Moving towards that, I'd also bear in mind, if everyone looks at the illustrative views there, you'll see Hollyoake Hall on the far right, which I can't remember what it was originally. Wasn't it a dance hall at some point? Cinema, snooker club. But in any case, when that was converted into flats, it's obviously had an additional element on the roof, and that looks like it's probably slightly higher than this. So I think it's difficult. I think it's just difficult to justify that this building, through its bulk and height, is out of keeping. Because I think as you go along London Road towards the city centre, there's a huge variety of domestic and more industrial, business use. Okay. Right. I've heard various people say they support this. Did you want to come back?
Yeah, I take all the points, especially Councillor Railton. Obviously, this is better than a white wall and what's there at the moment, but maybe it's not the best thing. I've heard all the other arguments, discussions, and in my opinion, I still think it's out of keeping. It's a little bit too big. I agree with where the snooker club was, where Sainsbury's is and stuff. But as we come down this side, it becomes into a sort of residential. It's right on the edge of the thing. So that's what my concern was. But, I do think that it's a massive improvement from previously. And as you said at the beginning, the previous application was not your application. So it's a massive improvement. So on that basis, sometimes planning is a matter of opinion, not a matter of fact. So yeah, that's it really.
Okay, Anna, just come back. I'm just confirming that Councillor Elton wants to move.
Yeah, I will. I will move to propose approving this application. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. And do I have Councillor Henwood? No. Okay. I do indeed. Thanks for reminding me of that. So, thank you, Councillor Fairweather. So we have a proposal to accept the officer's recommendation to approve with the attached conditions. Can I see all those in favour, please? Those against? And any abstentions? 2 abstentions. So that is carried. Thank you. Very much. Thank you very much for coming along, and I think we will now move on to our final application, which is 86 Temple Road. Minute. Okay, can we move on to our final application, which is 86 Temple Road, and Felicity Byrne is presenting the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is an application for the demolition of an existing garage and rear extensions, and the erection of 2-storey side and rear extensions, and subdivision of the resulting building and conversion into 2 large sui gen HMOs. On the slides in front of you, you can see the application site on the corner of Temple Road and Sailgate Road. And this is the house in question. It's an early 20th century building, which has been somewhat unsympathetically, in officers' view, extended in the 80s with an flat roof garage. So to the rear, you can see other sort of mishmash of extensions that have been done in the past. This is the adjacent property. And from the inside, there's some conifers which are referred to in the committee report. Looking from outside the site, you can see the application site to your left-hand side, and to the right, that's the numbers 82 and 84, 84 being the closest to the application site that sit on Temple Road as it curves round. Again, a close-up view of those, and note the identical symmetry of them. Looking past up Temple Road towards the application site, which would be on your right-hand side, quite obscured views. And then from Sailgate Road down towards the site in front of you, you can see the existing conifer trees, the existing boundary treatment, and the house itself behind. Oops, beg your pardon, gone down. And then from Temple Road, as you approach the site, this is the site on your left-hand side, it's heavily screened with beech trees. Again, you can see the boundary wall detail with the close boarded fencing above. So in front of you, you see the existing site layout and the proposed. Existing site has 2 car parking spaces, and it's proposed to retain those 2 car parking spaces, one each for each new property. So just showing you a proposal of the new dwellings together. The existing property, as you saw from the photos, is set well back from the road frontage. It's on the sort of prominent corner and it's well screened, and it's set back from the adjacent number 84. As I said earlier, it's been unsympathetically extended in the past, and the character of the area is one of pairs of semis and terrace properties and individual properties set back from the road with gables, feature bay windows at both ground and first floors, pitched roofs. And the area is within the Temple Cowley Conservation Area, and it's also within the CPZ. In officers' view, what is proposed, and you can see in front of you as I just move through the existing and then the proposed plans, which you can see in red, the existing proposal, would positively benefit the character and appearance of the conservation area and the character and appearance of the existing dwelling by creating 2 symmetrically designed semi-detached properties with feature bay windows and under sort of pitched roofs and with a matching chimney on one side as well. Overall, the height wouldn't be any higher than existing as well. There are some elements of flat roof in it as existing, but those would not be seen from within the public domain due to the current screening and the rise and fall of Temple Road and other roads surrounding. And just taking you through the existing proposed development, each property subdivided, each HMO would have 7 single occupancy, 1-bed bedrooms, so large HMOs. And 6 of those would have their own en-suites, and the one poor number 7 would have to use its own bathroom elsewhere. But overall, the amenities and facilities for both HMOs are to standard and to the council's required amenity standard. The outdoor amenity space is sufficiently big enough, and bins and bike stores would be provided. We did have revised details, and I apologise, but the condition that would secure the details of the bikes and bin stores as provided was not on the committee report, and I'd like to add that as an additional condition. Here I've just shown you a view of those bins and bike stores, which would provide one cycle parking space for each occupant as well. And each dwelling would have access directly onto the roads itself. Overall, there is a listed building in the vicinity, but due to the distance, officers considered that it would not harm or affect the setting of that listed building. Overall, we consider that the proposed development would be a betterment on the current situation, and there would be no harm to the character and appearance of the conservation area, and the development proposals would preserve and enhance the character and appearance of the conservation area. On amenity points, due to the siting layout and design, officers considered that there be no adverse impact on neighbouring residential amenity. With regard to the actual HMOs itself, we understand that HMOs do have sensitivity within the communities, but that's why we have the HMO policy. And currently, taking into account these two new HMOs, it would be 15%, which is below the 20% threshold of the policy, and therefore materially, that's a material consideration. And it demonstrates that this is acceptable. And in this current location, there isn't an over provision of these types of uses in sui gen HMOs in the or C4 small HMOs in the area, and therefore acceptable in principle. As I mentioned, parking, each property would have one retained parking space, but officers would impose a condition that removes them from having residential car permits for each property, and also visitor permits as well. In relation to trees, they are protected trees because they're in the conservation area, and officers are now satisfied that with a condition, they could be retained satisfactorily during construction and would not be impacted. In terms of bats and bats, sufficient surveys were provided, 2 lots of surveys, and officers consider that protected species have been given due regard and would not be harmed as a result, and mitigating provisions and enhancements would be secured by condition. In terms of BNG, the site actually meets the tests for de minimis exemption from the BNG, and therefore does not need to provide 10%. And subject therefore to the conditions in the report, and an additional condition securing the bike and bin stores as submitted, officers are recommending approval, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we have 2 speakers. Councillor Judith Harley wants to speak against the application, and Tom Rourke is speaking as the applicant. Councillor Harley, would you like to come forward? And you have 5 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. I am here representing some 31 of my neighbours who have written to object to this planning application, which, as you've heard, is within the Temple Cowley Conservation Area, on a corner plot at the junctions of Temple Road, Junction Road and Salegate Lane. This part of Temple Cowley is a quiet residential area, characterised by a mix of Victorian and later properties, many family dwellings occupied by long-term residents with a good community spirit. Almost opposite this site, which you weren't shown, is an early 18th century Grade 2 listed building. The proposal site is currently occupied by a detached family dwelling, and I wish to make the following comments for your consideration and request you refuse this application. This proposal is out of character with the Temple Cowley Conservation Area and the wider Temple Cowley area. It is too big, too bulky, and an overdevelopment of the site. In such a prominent position, it will dominate the skyline unacceptably, and it neither enhances nor preserves the conservation area, nor the 18th century Grade 2 listing building opposite, and will have a detrimental effect on these and the general character of the area. If approved, this proposal will set an unwelcome precedent. The proposal requests subdivision of an existing dwelling to create 2 7-bed large houses. And although 2 front doors are shown in the plans, the slide caption proposed loft and roof plans, which the officer skipped over, shows bedroom 6 and half of bedroom 7 from the right-hand dwelling, above the second floor and over the footprint of the left-hand dwelling. How can these be regarded as two separate dwellings? Our concern is that this is effectively an application for a single 14-bed dwelling. Due to the presence of LTNs in Temple Cowley, there is limited access to this site via the top end of Temple Road onto Oxford Road, and any additional traffic movements generated from construction traffic or potential residents would cause considerable congestion and danger to residents and to school children from nearby St Christopher's Primary School. The proposal shows inadequate parking for such a development, as you have seen. Section H of the officer's report suggests that removing the eligibility for parking permits will mitigate for the unacceptable increase in pressure for on-street parking resulting from the subdivision and change in use. We suggest from experience that it won't. Potential residents can't be prevented from owning cars, and the result is likely to significantly increase parking, access, and traffic problems for this area. You've heard about the large trees which are valued for their neighbourhood amenity and biodiversity, and we hope that the protection would be adequate, but we're not certain of that. The proposal would place unacceptable pressure on local infrastructure, including GP surgeries, and the officer's report, section 10.40, identifies bats foraging and commuting within the vicinity, and that the structure has moderate roost potential, and we're not convinced that enough care has been taken to ensure that bats are neither harmed nor their roosts disturbed. Section 3J of the officer's report, the informatives regarding the Human Rights Act 1998, considers the human rights of the applicant, but gives inadequate consideration to the human rights of neighbours of this property. The potential for considerable noise, disturbance and nuisance from such a large HMO development will adversely affect the local environment and living conditions of existing residents, contrary to the Human Rights Act. This application is totally unsuitable for this site for the above reasons, and we request that permission should be refused. However, as safeguards, if committee is minded to approve this application, I would request that extra conditions be added to cover the following. No delegated powers for any amendments. Any amendments must be returned to the Planning Committee for consideration. As one new dwelling will be created, can this new dwelling be specifically identified out of the two dwellings, and this relates to permitted development rights? And can you remove all permitted development rights from both resulting dwellings so that neither can be further extended without having to apply for planning permission and return to the Planning Committee for consideration? We do hope that you will refuse this application, but thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. If you could, and Mr. Orr. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Tom Rourke. I'm the applicant on this application. I'm also the Managing Director of MedShare, and I'm also a regional ear, nose and throat consultant surgeon. In addition to the extensive case officer's report, I would like to speak in support of this application and cover the following points. Question of overdevelopment, HMO amenities, parking, biodiversity and trees, character and conservation, and finally, who are MedShare? In terms of question of overdevelopment, it's been mentioned that in some of the objections that this scheme could be considered as overdevelopment. We would challenge this opinion based on the two following approaches. Firstly, it is relevant to consider dwellings per hectare. The recommended level for a conservation area is 35 to 55 dwellings per hectare. In the hectare including 86 Temple Road, as the central point, the current density is 29. Therefore, an increase of one dwelling would still be well under the upper limit of the dwellings per hectare in conservation areas. Secondly, in relation to the specific site, the proposal is to demolish the conservatory, rear extension and garage of an existing HMO and rebuild the side and rear extensions. This process will reduce the front elevation width of the property by 1.4 metres. In terms of overall changes to the ground footprint, this represents 19.8% increase, which we feel does not amount to overdevelopment of the site. In terms of HMO amenities, as the case officer's report clearly states, all of the bedrooms and kitchen living room areas exceed both the national and local HMO space standards. All bedrooms will be single occupancy. In terms of bathrooms, with most bedrooms having access to their own ensuite or separate bathroom, this far exceeds the national and local standards. There is a large area of private outdoor amenity for both properties, alongside appropriate cycle and bin storage. The properties will also be attended weekly by a cleaner to maintain the interior and oversee refuse management, as well as regular gardeners to maintain the exterior of the property. With parking, this property is within a controlled parking zone, which limits the amount of on-street parking and actively encourages car-free development where appropriate. There is also a proposed condition that removes the right for tenants to apply for a parking permit, which we fully support. Within our current rental portfolio in Oxford, less than 10% of our tenants use cars as their main mode of transport. The proposal to keep 2 existing parking places on the front drive is more than sufficient, as the majority of our tenants use either cycling or public transport, which also complies with the low traffic neighbourhood this property sits within. In terms of biodiversity and trees, we have worked hard to maintain and ultimately improve the biodiversity of this site. It is clear there are a number of very important trees on site, particularly 2 large beech trees. We have consulted with an arboriculturalist alongside the council's in-house team to complete a detailed tree assessment, ensure that the tree roots will be properly surveyed prior to construction, and ground screws will be used in place of traditional foundations to ensure that there is no harm to the trees and their root systems. We've also undertaken 3 bat surveys, including 2 immersion surveys, and the site has shown no evidence of bat roosts. In terms of character and conservation, we are acutely aware that this property does indeed sit within the Temple Cowley Conservation Area. It's important to note that designation within a conservation area doesn't mean that every building will be preserved and that no changes will be allowed, but instead helps to ensure that changes respect the area's character and appearance. When designing this property, we went through an extensive pre-application process with multiple revisions to ensure that the design was in keeping with the conservation area. We feel that the proposed design notably improves the existing appearance of the property and now closely matches those of a pair of semi-detached properties at 84 and 82 Temple Road, and also at 88 and 90 Temple Road, either side of the proposed property and also within the conservation area. The 3D visuals on the planning portal demonstrate this clearly. Finally, who are MedShare? MedShare are a specialist housing provider based purely in Oxford. We provide high quality homes predominantly to healthcare professionals and research professionals. We have over 100 tenants in Oxford, and we've worked extensively with the Oxford City Planning Department and also the HMO licensing team for several years now to build a stellar reputation not only as a considerate developer, but also as an exceptional landlord. To further support these statements, at the 2025 National HMO Awards, MedShare was winner of both the Best HMO Community Award and also the Best HMO Project Award. We're also runners-up in the Best Professional Manager of HMO Awards as voted for by tenants. We are a highly professional company that takes great pride in both our developments, but also the households we create within the HMOs, but also how they interact with the local community. In summary, I hope you're able to see that this is a very considered application that's been through both pre-application and full application processes with extensive scrutiny. We have answered all questions to ensure that a sensitive and sustainable development is being proposed that will be professionally managed long term. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. If you could just be here, just in case there are any specific questions about the development. Thank you. Committee questions. Councillor Railton.
Oh, okay, I think so. Okay. So I guess my questions are around the very top floor. So I guess does it matter that there's a sort of like slightly, maybe like weird sort of flying freehold thing where one of the buildings kind of goes above the other? And secondly, like the shower unit in the ensuite bit in like bedroom 7 in the sort of roof one is quite odd. I assume that's because of all of the eaves and things. If you bring up the picture, it's the proposed loft and roof plans. It came up in the report as well that it was a bit, so yeah, is there any, yeah, I don't know, it is a bit the odd one. Can that be, I don't know, like, do I have a question? I don't know, but yeah, I guess.
Is it high enough for people?
Yeah, that'd be good. Sure. Thank you.
I mean, in planning terms, obviously you do have properties with flying freehold over sailing properties, but they're still individual properties. Subject to being corrected by our legal team, I don't think there's a particular issue with that. And notwithstanding that, I mean, it will be a long-term management by the current owner. If that were to be sold on, then that would be part of each individual freehold. And perhaps the applicant might have something to say on that. I mean, in terms of the actual ensuite and the floor plan, I am assuming it's like that because of the eaves height, but nevertheless, it meets our amenity standard, and obviously building regs, which is a separate process, will ensure that it has correct building, heights and stuff. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to build it and they wouldn't be suggesting it. So that's a separate process altogether. But in terms of how it's provided, we're satisfied that that is a room of sufficient space to meet our standards and is acceptable.
Well, if you could come back.
Yeah, just to confirm that this
Yeah.
will be split officially on land registry into two separate properties, and there will be a flying freehold that is attached to property on the right-hand side that has the loft. If the committee feel that the bathroom is not of good design, that's quite something that we could quite simply redesign into a better setup if they felt that was necessary.
Thank you. Happy with that, Councillor Kerr?
Just a very quick one, 10.32 on green infrastructure features such as trees, obviously we want to retain them. When you look at this on Google Maps, you can see there's quite a big garden out the front. Is that looks like it is being retained, but you can't entirely see from the picture. So, the effect of green infrastructure features such as trees on the local community. I'm just asking, is that staying? And if it isn't staying, I'm looking at it from satellite view. Is that a problem? Yeah, that'll do. So you can see it there. Is that being retained? That may be one for the applicant. I don't know if I can ask the applicant that question. Chair, may I ask?
Let's ask the officer first of all, and then we'll defer to the applicant.
Love that. It sort of looks like it is from the draft.
I do know the answer.
He probably does know the answer, but there is a landscape, conditioned landscape plan. So we would obviously require details of all the landscaping to be retained there. And if it is possible, we will obviously make them do that, obviously.
By that, Mr. Ward.
Yeah, as part of our sort of site location plan, we'll be losing about 4 to 5 square metres of that front driveway green space, and we'll be retaining the vast majority of it.
Okay. Other questions? Sorry, Ejaz.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've just got a couple of questions. The HMO facilities, that's not a planning consideration at this stage, is it? Or is it? It is. Okay. Some of the en-suites, it concerned me that they're quite small, although they are en-suites, but they're really tight. I don't know if they're really usable, especially the toilets, for example, and a couple that I saw, they were really, really tight, right next to the shower. That was number one. And I lost number two, so I'll come back to you when I got it.
Firstly, they might look tight on the plan, but clearly they're going to have to satisfy building regs and also our own sort of space standards within the HMO facilities guide, which also has an impact on licensing. I would be surprised if they are not to that level of standard. It's difficult for us to double check firmly here, but again, I don't have any reason to doubt that they wouldn't be usable en suites.
Thank you, and I've remembered my second question. So when we, if there was a house, a C3, and we was to develop it into 2 C3s or something, we'd have to retain one 3-bedroom C3. Does that apply to when it goes to C4? I get the fact that this is going from C3 to a sui generis, but for example, the best way I can put it, because I can't give you the housing policy, but if there was a semi-detached house and somebody wanted to convert it into 2 flats, one of the flats or one of the part of the building would have to be a 3-bedroom C3. As we're losing a house, would that apply to this? I'm not sure, so I'm asking.
You're talking about the policy about no net loss of a dwelling house?
Yeah.
Well,
that only applies to when you're actually demolishing an actual house, as opposed to this, which is a conversion to an HMO usage, which comes under a different policy.
Thank you. I just want to check. Thanks.
Other questions? Pardon? No. Okay. Yes. Okay. Comments, everybody. Emily.
Yeah, look, I think honestly, I think it should be applauded. We've providing spaces for doctors and NHS workers to be in Oxford in suitable accommodation. That means that they're not occupying other spaces. You know, this is purpose built for NHS workers. I applaud the applicant for knowing the travel habits of his residents. You know, that's an operational detail that he's chosen to share with us as part of planning. If we are in a location like this improving density, we are enabling kind of there to be more people in the same space, using space better. I will be supporting this application.
Yes, agree with everything Emily just said. I mean, I'm not convinced by the overdevelopment arguments because it's actually not a huge amount bigger. It's much better looking and much better designed than it currently is. You know, we've got something symmetrical that looks like the two semis next door. You know, it's actually an actual purpose designed HMO rather than the sort of like slightly shonky kind of retrofit, just kind of squeeze stuff in like, you know, like it currently is. So I think that's also to be applauded. The condition with respect to cycle parking, I mean, from they are tiny images, but it'd be good to get the sort of like 1.5 meter spacing in there between racks, because it currently doesn't look like they are. That looks like an absolute nightmare to get bikes into. But apart from that, I am very happy with it and will also be supporting it.
Thank you. I don't see any planning grounds to refuse this application. So again, I think the officers have done quite good work on this. Just from picking up from the speaker saying every condition before lifted or it should come back to here. And I believe the speaker is also a councillor and she should look at the waiting list of applications. So if every condition we bring it back to this application again and again, that means the committee is only looking at this. So we have a long waiting loads and the officers have a lot of work, and that's why the smaller conditions or bits are delegated, and we trust the officers will look into when they discharge those conditions. So I'm happy with this application.
Thank you, Chair. I should be supporting this application. It does contribute greatly to the accommodation available for health workers and other professionals in the area. The only slight concern I have is the optimistic looking picture of the proposed development with the nice brick walls and the greenery, which doesn't seem to actually tie up with the proposed site plan in terms of 2 cars parked and a bike store, but I'll let that go. I think as Councillor Railton said, I think this is an improvement. The design of the house is very similar to other houses. I looked on Google Earth to see what the locality was like. This is not going to stand out. It's an improvement on what was there before, which is not a brilliant design of an extension to a 1930s detached house. So I should be supporting this.
Okay, and Councillor Taylor, did you want to come in, Councillor Henwood?
I only have one observation, is the relationship with the Grade 2 listed building. I'm just not quite comfortable with the way that it sits with that. Otherwise, I won't be voting in favour, I will be abstaining. It's just the relationship with the vicinity of the Grade 2 listed building that's the issue for me.
Taylor.
Yeah, I propose that we approve the application with the suggested conditions.
And yeah, I think we seem to be pretty happy with this generally. Okay, so let's vote with to approve the application with the attached conditions. All those in favour? All those against? And any abstentions? Okay, so that is carried. Thank you, everybody. And I think just for noting, we have got the list of forthcoming applications, which Councillor Khan has helpfully drawn our attention to, and the